Former CIA Station Chief Dan Hoffman. Dan, always great to see you. Do you think Congressman Waltz has a point there? Do you think the Ayatollahs do smell weakness in the White House?
Well, I think that there just are a litany of concerns about a nuclear deal with Iran, starting with the fact that this deal doesn't address Iran's state sponsorship of terrorism, which includes their attempt to assassinate our former National Security Advisor, John Bolton. It doesn't deal with their ballistic missile program, and the fact that we found uranium at 3 previously undisclosed facilities in Iran that President Raisi refuses to discuss as part of this deal. But the overriding concern is that there's no chance that any such deal could be incorporated into a treaty because Democrats as well as Republicans in the Senate so strongly oppose it. And that means that the deal in and of itself is unlikely to really produce what we want. You know, Iran is a nuclear threshold state right now, and even if a deal were signed with those nuclear sunset clauses, we'd only increase, the time before Iran could have a nuclear weapon to maybe a couple of years. So there's a lot of concern out there, and mostly also from the Israelis who happen to live in the backyard in the Middle East, and rightly so.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. Nobody's more concerned than the Israelis. The Israeli defense minister, who plans to visit, says, quoting here, the purpose of the visit is to convey a clear message regarding the negotiations between the powers and Iran on the nuclear agreement, an agreement that will not return Iran's capabilities years back and will not leave it limited for many years to come, is an agreement that will harm global and regional security. And he's not alone. There's a lot of agreement on that exact statement, Dan.
There is. And look, I think part of this discussion that has to take place is what's our plan? You know, the Israelis have reportedly launched attacks on Iran's nuclear scientists, most notably Fakhrizadeh back in November of 2020. He was the director of Iran's nuclear program, but that hasn't stopped Iran. And so what is our policy which will ensure that Iran does not ever have a nuclear weapon capability? I think that's something that we need to be discussing with the Israelis as well.
Yeah, then Jennifer Griffin also talked to the former CENTCOM commander, General McKenzie. I want to play his soundbite and get your take on the other side, Dan.
If the U.S. signs the Iran nuclear deal, as it looks like they're going to, and sanctions relief is provided, what impact will that have on the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps?
I think it will give them added funding to further support their destabilizing and malign activities across the region.
Money for malign activities. Your final thoughts, Dan?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. Iran is supporting proxy militias in Yemen and Iraq, and they're propping up Bashar al-Assad in Syria. And let's also remember that if we remove sanctions from Iran, Russian oil will flow to Iran. Iran will be able to resell that oil and help Russia's war effort in Ukraine. So a lot of this is interconnected. The Biden administration needs to factor in all of these potential ramifications of what is for sure considered to be a bad deal among not just Republicans, but Democrats as well.
I got 10 seconds left. I want to get your thoughts very quickly on the U.S. warships sailing through the Strait of Taiwan for the first time since Nancy Pelosi went there. What do you make of this?
Well, China considers Taiwan to be a breakaway province, and they consider the Taiwan Strait to be part of its territorial waters, and we're trying to demonstrate that that freedom of the seas, freedom of navigation is still in hold. But China's trying to intimidate not us as much. I think they can't really do that, but potential allies in the region of ours and dissuade them from supporting Taiwan. China wants to isolate Taiwan diplomatically, strategically, and economically. And Taiwan is a flashpoint right now on the geopolitical fault line between democracy and China's dictatorship.
And the tensions aren't exactly going down. Dan Hoffman, always great to see you. Thank you.
Subscribe to the Fox News YouTube channel to catch our nightly opens, stories that are changing the world and changing your life. From Tucker Carlson tonight.